I've read a book, episode 1, The Spring to Come, The Coming Spring, originally Przedwiośnie. So, one day, it dawned on me that, heck, I actually liked the books that I read in school. Overall, my adventure with reading is complicated. It's been over a dozen years since I finished high school now, and only recently, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I returned, quite unexpectedly, to reading. Several days ago, it struck me that I'm missing all this mandatory reading, that I've had fun reading those. Of course, not every one. Still, it was a worthwhile selection, one that one could enjoy, one that made you think. Now, those books are put on a pedestal. However, they are still books. To resonate, they have to be read. So I thought, why not go through them once again? On one hand, going down the memory lane, on the other, filling in the blanks I did not give a chance earlier. And talking about making one think, soon after I thought, how about making a YouTube channel to talk about the books? And right after, well, I know English, I work in English, why not double up and create an EN channel as well? Now, thinking about that in particular, I initially thought to talk about only the books foreign to me, as those must be well known worldwide. But then I thought, well, actually, I have no idea what from Poland is well known worldwide. So let's talk about the Polish pride as well. And here we are. Now, the idea for the channels is, considering my fond memories, to first perhaps talk about how I remember those before a second read. This will be the first part of the video. I didn't reread The Spring to Come yet, but I remember quite well my story of reading it in high school. The Coming Spring was a late assignment, closer to the end than the start of the school. My youthful rebellion was kicking in a bit. I was less willing to comply than earlier. I wasn't too keen on reading this one. I remember I got a bit surprised. It was a Monday lesson when it was either said that we start going through it, or perhaps that we will on the next meeting. Not exactly sure about that. I am certain that I did not read it just yet then. So I borrowed the book from the library the same day, and the same evening started reading. I was completely taken by the book. I went through it in 1 or 2 quite pleasant evenings. Now, coming to the content of the book itself, I have some strong memories. My memory highlights the Baku revolution and the journey to Poland, together with the tale of the glass houses, as larger parts of the story than the later portion, when the protagonist comes to Poland. Even though I know that Poland makes 2/3 of the story, while Baku and houses both are within the first chapter. Thinking about springtime's Baku, I think about the nihilistic situation, and I mainly recollect a scene in which Cezary Baryka hallucinates the corpse of a young woman speaking to him. Even though, thinking longer, I vaguely recall that back in Baku, there was the protagonist's sickly mother. She didn't make much of an impact in my memory. Coming fast after that is the journey to Poland by train in poverty and misery. I strongly recall a macabre scene of a night at some station where, coming through, young Baryka crushes someone's head. And, of course, The highlight of this journey, the tale coming from, also sickly, elderly Baryka about the glass houses. Utopian, exaggerated, while at the same time highly detailed fairy tale about overwhelming prosperity. Reading for the first time, I even bought into it. So there was a time in Poland where we had homes that were poured into shape on beaches? Of course, at the time, I did not know the further part of the story. The further part of the story showed Poland poor. After this lofty tale and after the toil, the disappointment was seeping from the book. At the same time, remember, the protagonist just escaped a hellish warscape. Now, I don't remember the name of the character, but later, young Baryka found himself under the wardship of this quite positivist, former good friend of his mother. This man tried to teach Cezary that this is the way to a good future. I remember, either from the lessons or from the abstracts, that this character was the one that is believed to represent the author's mindset. But young Baryka was hot-headed. He wanted more, and he wanted it fast. He joined up with some troublemakers. Commies, I think? And while the book showed a struggle between the two moralities, the hard-working one loses. I remember that the book ends up with the protagonist going to start some actual street riot against what is being slowly built. The discussion about the book had this thread that the author had to face allegations of sympathizing with communism, although it was rather clear to me that his allegiances lie elsewhere and it is more of a warning. At the same time, I suppose it helped the book survive the communist rule in Poland. Thinking about how I remember the spring to come, I find the book seems to resonate quite well with today. The idealization of Poland that he never saw by Seweryn Baryka reminds me of, a bit dying out, but still present, idealization of the West by contemporary Poles. Or maybe even more presently, the idealization of Dubai by influencers. People have an innate need to find the ideal place, ignoring that reality is never ideal. It leads us to underappreciate what we actually have. Today's Poland is considered heaven on earth by many outside observers, while we in here concentrate on our woes. Well, other places have theirs, often far worse than ours. But perhaps this thread can be better connected not to Cezary's father, but rather to his protector. He tells the protagonist that tomorrow is built with consistent hard work, that we already managed to build a lot, but our hero wanted a simpler solution. It makes me think about political populism of today, and specifically for young men with alt-right or manosphere. The promoters of more radical thought win with the solutions that work by promising easy rewards, closing their eyes to the growth that is happening all around us. And Baryka buys it. The same Baryka who knows where it all leads, coming from war-torn Baku. Next thought that I have is the theme of wanting chaos, despite having the experience to compare the order that we have with the war that is very close to us. Once again, it is thematic to how here in Poland we don't really care in our day-to-day about Ukraine that fights right beyond our border anymore, and we are back to bickering between each other. So yeah, those are my memories of my past reading. But yeah, this series is called I've Read a Book, so maybe I'll actually go and read it, and I'll be back with you. So, hello again. I'm wearing a different t-shirt, and I've read the book. Memories are a very interesting thing. Before the reread, I was actually proud of myself in regards to how well I remembered things. Now I feel a tad stupid in regards to a few things I said. Still, I'll keep that in. It will be more interesting this way. So, what did I misremember? Baryka's parents definitely saw Poland before Baku. If anything, it was not free Poland. I feel really embarrassed for forgetting about Jadwiga Baryka, but I'll get to that. I also did not remember that before the revolution, or actually many revolutions of Baku, the city is shown to us during peacetime. Similarly, I completely forgot that the book includes a fragment about the Polish-Soviet War of 1920. But going back a few steps to Baryka's journey, the macabre scene of the train station, well, I don't think I made it up. Perhaps I mismatched it with some other book. The poverty contrasting the glass houses tale, well, I won't say it's absent. I will, however, say that it's not as much in your face. It is there, yes. However, it is only brought up between the lines of chapter 2 or at the tail end of chapter 3. For sure, the clash is not so sudden and obvious as I described it earlier. And speaking of chapter 2, Nawłódź. I remember The Coming Spring as a political novel, just as it was described. We have a 90-page chapter 1 of a political novel, a 60-page chapter 3 of a political novel, and then between those we have a 150-page tragic aristocratic romance. Now, the second chapter was not unknown to me. It quickly came back to me as I started reading. The thing is, I did not associate it with The Coming Spring in my memory. I thought this idyllic countryside manor tale is a part of a different novel. I don't know. That's all, the frontier, or I don't know, the homeless. And yet, here we are. It was part of the early spring. Then again, I am not that surprised about myself. The second chapter is written rather differently from others. The first one is full of descriptions and filled to the brim with events. In the second, the book slows down. There is more dialogue. The third is back to a kaleidoscope of events. Yeah. I am not surprised as well in not remembering the name of Szymon Gajowiec, the positivist protector. While he was foreshadowed since the prologue and throughout all the chapters, when it comes to it, there's not that much of him in chapter 3 in the end. And speaking about him, I also spoke about rivaling ideologies of positivism and communism, treating them as even-footed rivals. Well, I completely forgot how much of a commie Baryka is since the start. His Nawłocz comrade Hippolyte pokes fun at his worldview, and rightfully so, since they beat the Soviets back to Moscow together. Maybe because of that, and also that one part where Baryka comes to a Communist Party formative meeting to tell them all they are friggin' stupid, my memory was deceiving me in regards to the chances of the positivist alternative. But yeah, it is not philosophy that doomed Cezary. It was women. I remember being slightly annoyed at reviewers always needing to summarize the body of work they are reviewing. And here we are. Now I am a reviewer, and I see no other way to proceed than to, well, summarize. The book starts with a prologue, which name might translate to lineage. It is a brief synopsis of Cezary's parents. First, we are introduced to Jadwiga Dąbrowska, born in Siedlce, Poland. The woman is plucked away from her beloved home country by the man she accepted, even though she loved another. Her former paramour was Szymon Gajowiec, her soon-to-be husband, a Tsarist Russia official, a Polish man, Seweryn Baryka. She never truly assimilates in the future Azerbaijan, finding solace only in taking care of her only child, a love that is barely reciprocated. Seweryn is a career man, climbing the Tsarist public ladder. He ain't a prick, just an ordinary yet useful guy trying to survive. He manages to make some solid money, though he puts most of it aside, living fairly modestly. Despite his current-day allegiances, he hides the pride of being a descendant of a grandfather, Kalixt, who supported some failed Polish national uprising for which all his property was taken from him. That formally disgraced ancestor is passingly mentioned in some war journal, which is Seweryn's personal treasure. The first chapter starts, as I mentioned, in peacetime Baku, Cezary's childhood. He's being tutored, he's having family time with his parents, he's benefiting from the prosperity, and he's being the pride of both mom and dad. This is not to last, however, as his father is drafted to the Tsarist Russia military to go fight in the First World War. With his pups no longer present, young Baryka becomes a menace, making trouble all over the neighborhood. A wealthy one to boot, as Seweryn ensured the stability of family finances. His mother tries to have a corrective impact on his bad behavior, but to no effect. As much as she dislikes the situation, a mother is a mother. She cares for his son. Soon, the communist revolution comes to Baku. Cezary outright likes it, which is a bit of a paradox considering his social situation. With time, he starts to feel the effects of the ideals he supports, especially after his father is first declared MIA and then KIA, which withholds his pay. Cezary, however, still obliviously smiles to his cruel situation. Only his mother was fully aware of the doom that befell on them. Despite their assets shrinking, she kept on providing for the lazy bum, which took a great toll on her. Young Baryka started to perhaps slightly notice things, started developing something of a conscience, but he did not let it shine through that much. After they provide shelter to some fleeing duchess, Jadwiga and Cezary Baryka are truly punished and put to hard labor, which leads to the matron eventually dying from sheer exhaustion. A cruel fate, but it spared her what the future held for Baku. The revolutionarist city was first host to Armenian, English-backed purges on the Tatars, then to Tatar retribution supported by the Turks. Baryka was useful to the current leading powers, and his salvation during retribution time came due to some ID confirming he is a Pole, which the Turks respected. This deathly misery shows us scenes of nihilism, including the aforementioned hallucination of a dead female body talking to him from the bodycart he was pushing towards burial. At this time, unexpectedly, his father returns to him. The war veteran has one goal: to return to Poland, as he fought for its regained freedom in the Polish legions. I mean, this is the overarching goal, which is split into smaller sub-objectives, the first of which is the retrieval of the suitcase he left in Moscow. Not ecstatic about it, being a convinced revolutionary, Cezary goes with his father in a burst of familial love. Before they even finish the first leg of the journey, getting that luggage, with Severin still in a so-so state, we are presented with the half-delirious tale about the glass houses. The old man assures his son that there's this grand inventor called, well, why not, Baryka as well, that builds Poland in some utopian, technocratic, philanthropic image. It's hard to say how much of it is him trying to actually convince his son and how much is caused by the sick man's fever. What is certain is that he tells the tale before he gets the medicines from his preserved belongings. But he recovers those successfully soon after. After that, it's going well for a while, but not for long. The repatriation of Poles is only planned by the Russians up to Kharkov. There, our world travelers have to stay longer than expected. At the very start of the stay, they are robbed of their just regained belongings. It happens in a rather obvious way. They are swindled by an untrustworthy official. With no medicine, Severin's state worsens. However, eventually, their dream of returning to Poland materializes in the form of a train set on course there. Problem is, it is full. They almost wouldn't go if not for the help of their countrymen. Specifically, a particular priest convinces a former work colleague of Severin to smuggle the two gentlemen in the luggage compartment. There, the veteran dies, not making it to his home country. The repatriants kiss the border signs euphorically, while our Azerbaijani Pole merely wonders, where are the glass houses he was promised? Following his father's instructions, Cezary goes to Warsaw to find Szymon Gajowiec, in the lineage described as some small fish working at an inn, now the deputy minister of the treasury. The official, mildly surprisingly, welcomes our protagonist very warmly, seeing a part of his long-lost love in him. They talk about Jadwiga a lot. Szymon Gajowiec gives Cezary Baryka a job. Cezary also takes on medical school duties, though he does not have much time to learn, as soon comes the Polish-Soviet War. A bit against himself, he enlists into the military, that staunch commie he is. Everyone he knows here does it, so he does it too. And he's a very effective soldier, having no family, no loved one, or no place on earth. With nothing to lose, he's proceeding from a victory to victory. One of his war triumphs is a daring rescue of a blue-blooded comrade, Hipolit Wielosławski, who invites him to recuperate at his lands after the war is won. The second chapter sees the novel change dramatically. It relates on races, parties, droves of characters are introduced. We are presented to many servants, happy in the service, or multiple people from Hippolyte's family. Now, before I get to the women I mentioned, I'll just talk about one other character. The light-hearted banqueteer, the plump tomato, clergyman Anastasi. He's shown to us stuffing himself, enjoying many a drink, snoring, humming party songs, dressing up. At the same time, the descriptions of him never explicitly show him lacking in his priestly credentials. Now, to the key characters of this chapter. The first of the women introduced to us is a slightly lost Azbaryka, Miss Karolina Szarłatowiczówna. She's an aristocrat, somewhat related to the Wielosławskis. Her estates were in Ukraine, which was now overtaken by the Bolsheviks. She lost her family there, herself surviving due to studying in Poland at the time. Now she's a working woman, managing the Wielosławskis' residence. And by managing the residence, I do not mean office work. She's actually helping with the chickens or the geese. At the same time, she remains an aristocrat. Due to her education combined with her abandonment, she is very similar to Cezary. Miss Caroline is girly. She's holding grudges over small things, she's getting embarrassed. At the same time, she's hardened, able to take care of herself, and she's not a pushover. Next, we meet Wanda Okrzyńska. Well, meet. Cezary, strolling through the premises, sees her being spooked by a very combative guinea fowl. Only later, we are told she's also family's family to Wielosławskis, sent to the countryside to live with them. Today we'd call her neurodivergent. Wanda has trouble interacting with people or learning things. However, she's a savant with the piano. Last but not least, we have the confident, enterprising Amazon, Laura Kośniewska. Cezary meets her, together with her fiancé of convenience, Mr. Barwicki, when he's away on a horse ride with Hippolyte. She invites, nay, forces our adventurers to have lunch with them. Riding to her estate, she's described as a very adept horse rider, and once they arrive, Cezary is very impressed with her transformation when she changes into a proper dress. Miss Laura is organizing a charity ball for war veterans who lost their limbs during the war. She is very happy with the presence of Mr. Baryka, as she had a shortage of male dancers for it. Coming back to Wielosławski's estate, our troublemakers encounter Wanda playing the piano. Cezary was also good with the instruments, so he proposes a four-handed play. For Wanda, this is one of the most wonderful experiences in her life. She secretly falls in love in our secret commie. Living with the Wielosławskis, Cezary grows close to Karolina. At times she's teasing her, but other times he has heart-to-heart conversations with her. You could think they are growing together. Feeling in the mood, thinking nobody's looking, he kisses Karolina one time. He's wrong, however, as Wanda was snooping in on that. From now on, our atypical girl lives tortured by jealousy. Our soldiers help Laura in organizing the event. One time, when at a related errand, Cezary gets stranded at the venue. Laura stumbles upon him there, offering him a ride back in her cart. In a rush of passion, he makes out with the ball's hostess, who happily kisses him back. Our protagonist starts to frequent Laura's estate for booty calls, which the author refrains from describing due to fear of censorship. We arrive at the day of the party. As it was expected of him, Cezary dances quite a lot, with Karolina enticing Wanda's jealousy, or with Wanda herself making her over the moon. He, however, has his eyes on Laura all the time. The lovers cannot help themselves even during the event. When they leave to do their thing, Karolina sees them, and now she is tortured by jealousy too. After the so-called picnic, life goes on. Cezary and Wanda play four hands as usual, during which he realizes her feelings. But he doesn't really care, he has his appointments with Laura. His coming and returning from such is observed by Karolina, finding Cezary's pretending that nothing's happening to be tiring. Mr. Baryka has other adventurous activities with Hippolyte too. Returning from one of those, they are suddenly told that Karolina has been poisoned, and dying, she asks for one last meeting with Cezary. The dying lady bids him farewell with a kiss, while Father Anastasy performs some kind of ritual. It is quite evident that Karolina was poisoned by Wanda during a usual visit with strychnine. However, without strong evidence and no possible motive, she is let off the hook easily. But, well, another one bites the dust. Cezary has a booty call. He's caught by the fiancé, Barwicki, who beats him up. Baryka beats him back even more. Laura intervenes, defending her betrothed, and stupefied, Cezary hits her in the face. Frightened with what just happened, he flees. He screams at the world. He does not know what to do with himself. He tries to return and continue to make love, but he's not let in anymore. Deciding to return to Wielosławski's estate, while crossing the cemetery, he meets Father Anastasy, all serious. The priest knew from Karolina about her feelings. He suggests to quarrelsome Baryka that he confesses to him. However, the protagonist, all feral, denies. Having slept it over already, he is found by his companion Hippolyte, who also offers brotherly help. Cezary almost rejects that as well, but in a fit of remembering he's a Bolshevik, he asks to be placed at the mill in the poor Chłodek for 2 weeks to live with the people before the severely postponed return to Warsaw. This is almost the end of the tragic aristocratic romance part, almost, as it will return to play a key part in the returning political novel. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The meal is poor, but sustainable. The people there see Barika as some kind of industrial spy about to take however little they have from them. Still, he does make some observations about the poverty of seasonal workers during winter. The third chapter begins. Returning to his studies, the protagonist rents a room from a university colleague, but also sleazy entrepreneur, Buławnik. The place is small and with a gaping hole, but Cezary cannot afford anything better. To make ends meet, he first sells the tuxedo he got from Hippolyte, his last souvenir from Nawłoch. Then he reluctantly returns to get some kind of job from this boring positivist Szymon Gajowiec. The deputy minister of the treasury welcomes our Bolshevik warmly. Baryka doesn't really want to tell him any stories of his exploits, so he redirects the conversation towards the portraits hanging in the official's study. Now, this part of the novel is very short, truly, just a few pages. However, going through it back during school class, I remember that a big emphasis is put on it, and since I am already going through the book in detail, we have the images of three personas here: Marian Bohusz, Stanisław Krzemiński, and Edward Abramowski. Gajowiec calls them the Warsawians. Marian Bohusz is introduced to us as a scientist interested in nature, the first one to conduct secret teaching in occupied Poland. He propagated philosophy, wrote essays, translated literature. He appeared suddenly and then rapidly disappeared. Mr. Gajowiec says that people like Adam Marburg did it more consistently later on, however, Bohusz was the first one. Stanisław Krzemiński is described as a patriotic writer, one that perhaps saw the downsides of the stances Poles took historically, but one that also saw our inner strength. He also described modern diplomatic arts. The man is said to have encyclopedic knowledge. Last one is Edward Abramowski. He is particularly interesting in the context. He is described as a Marxist socialist, saying that countries should be dissolved and that humanity should create grassroots organizations as the only form of association. In my modern eye, that sounds eerily close to Bolshevik communism. So, do you think Baryka liked this one? Heck no! Cezary is bored by all those historical stances. Let me remind you, he started this whole topic as he did not want to share his recent stories. The book often reminds that the protagonist interacts with Szymon Gajowiec very reluctantly, mostly due to being economically dependent on him. Regardless, the deputy minister continues. He tells a story about Bohusz publishing an essay, one that slipped through the censorship. He was commenting on the anniversary celebration of the 3rd of May Polish Constitution that was ill-perceived by the powers that be in occupied Poland. While not outright illegal, it was considered scandalous that people dared to celebrate it at the time. Marian Bohusz writes about a man announcing that he's looking for a travel companion to America. Someone responds to the announcement only to say, "Well, I'm not going to America, I don't recommend that you do, and actually, you know what, I object to you going as well." Stanisław Krzemiński is further described as the one that kept up hope with his writing, while the people of today including the deputy minister, have to reshape this hope into action. Last but not least, the further comment on Abramovsky is peculiar. Szymon Gajowiec says that his ideals are being fulfilled despite contradicting means. The idea of associations is a good one, but the minister asserts that the country must be backing them. Those organizations are nothing else than public service ones. To prove his point, he brings up the Skolimov crime, where a person who the victim trusted was among the perpetrators, so an outside party was needed to address its fallout. He also brings up the Polish-Soviet War, where it would be too long to wait for a grassroots military response. But that's enough of those tales. Let's return to current events. Baryka went to Gajowiec to get a job, and he gets one. The deputy minister is writing a very factual book, and he needs an able secretary to, well, we'd say today, analyze data. Between his work, studies and accommodation, Baryka crosses or, heck, even explores the Jewish ghetto. He notes that despite the poverty of it, the concentration happens naturally, as even if others are penniless, the familiarity brings people together. Cezary is amazed that despite the impoverishment, the mercantile culture is maintained. Going further, we are told that with his continued interactions with Szymon Gajowiec, Baryka is fed up listening about all this slow, consistent improvement, that he's irritated by how much is still in terrible state, and that he's not interested in hearing excuses that it was worse or we managed to do that. We are also informed that the Deputy Minister of the Treasury works on a reform introducing a common currency, the Polish zloty. It's an idea he strongly believes in. Moving on, we are introduced to this despicable creature, a fellow law student called Lulek. All sickly, coughing profusely, he got excused from service during the Polish Bolshevik War due to that. Now, with all his flaws, Cezary Baryka, since coming to Poland, was only a communist in spirit, acting against his beliefs. Lulek maybe did absolutely nothing thus far, but he also did not act against the Bolshevism in any way. He visits Cezary, sits around at his place, and spins his tales about how communism is wonderful. Baryka actually likes those conversations, even if aware that Lulek tries to shape him the way he wants. He replaced some formulas common for the communist thought with terms closer to Cezary. They discussed the bourgeoisie by calling them people like Laura, Gajowiec, Barwicki, or like those from Nawłódź. Lulek tested the limits of his manipulations, and he did not always hit the right notes. Sometimes Cezary resisted strongly. The main two topics of conflict were Cezary's military past or Lulek's callousness towards collateral damage. Baryka grew out of the latter. Now he wanted to help people without hurting them. So yeah, Lulek takes the protagonist to a Communist Party meeting. There, the participants tell their classic spiel about how the power in hands of the working class will not exclude nobody, or how statistically the laborers have it the worst. Our great communist Cezary Baryka listens to all that, only to speak up and say, "Guys, what are you saying is stupid." Yep, the idealistic commie goes to a formative meeting of none other than communists, and having more life experience now, instead of agreeing to everything as he did in Baku, he tells people that he's not entirely sure that communism is the best solution. In response to that, he hears some sorry tale about police brutality. He rushes out of the meeting and, all emotional, goes to sit at some cafe. Sitting so, he observes the street from the window. He sees a patrolling policeman, smirking, yeah, that poor soul is torturing political prisoners, for sure. He observes a coal delivery to some home, it was winter, and how adeptly bits of it are stolen by scrawny thieves. Once again, he also sees a poor Jew barely pushing his cart by. At the same time, he sees well-off people driving through in their automobiles. He ponders on going back to the meeting and apologizing. However, his judgment tells him it doesn't make any sense. However, he has some meta thoughts, pondering whether his judgment isn't lying to him, discouraging from what is actually the best course of action. But yeah, he realizes there's no time for that, as it's time to go to work. He storms into Gajowiec's office, telling him he comes from a Communist Party meeting, and starts arguing with the old man. Now he's telling the miserable story about police brutality. He says that poverty is all around us, that we should counteract it more effectively, and that he does not accept the reformative, slow efforts of the deputy minister. He says the patriots lack a concrete ideal. Gajowiec first rejects the torture story, then he says that even if it's just a temporary situation before we are better organized. As for the ideal, he provides the Polish zloty. It's unclear how the interaction ends, as the next scene jumps to Baryka during his studies at the morgue, where he gets a letter from Laura wanting to meet. Despite him equaling her to the class enemy moments before, he's over the moon after getting the invitation, and he's hopeful about a happy ending. And so they meet. Miss Now Barwicka starts the conversation by reminiscing about the last time they saw each other when Baryka hit her. Even so, he jumps fast to sweet-talking her. She explains that he ruined everything and that she had to marry Barwicki to save face. She says that he's meeting Cezary now to somehow reconcile. He wants her to run away with him, she laughs at the idea, he lashes out and runs away. The next scene is an epilogue of sorts. After a factory owner rejected to raise wages of his workers, they occupied the plant and announced they work for themselves now. This incites communist riots. The demonstrators are storming the Belvedere Palace, the seat of government, led by none other than Cezary Baryka. It is implied that the bitterness of the meeting with Laura led him here. Before so, his better judgment held him back. Regardless, the book ends with the protagonist being the first to make a move against the soldiers protecting the place. I'll say it once again. I did not expect myself to present a full plot summary, but here we are. I will finish with some general thoughts, mirroring the first part of the video. Cezary is a very peculiar character. The fact that he is the idealistic communist is very contradictory. well-raised, wealthy, the people closest to him gave his life against those very ideals. Heck, he himself put his life on stake against the Soviets. So, where does it come from? I suppose the idea simply came up at the worst possible moment of his life, with no father to keep him in line, and with his whole surroundings fascinated with the new concept. Well, there was simply nobody to restrain him. Would his father be able to do so, though, if he were there? I'm not sure. Neither his mother nor his teachers could, after all. The return of his father put that part of him at bay. Growing up did so too. With all that said, the reason for the return to those beliefs is obvious. A heartbreak that leads him to reject everything that he associates with his ex. And as I said, it is this frustration of the failed reconciliation with Laura that leads him over the edge. Gajowiec had no chance. Maybe he would have won before Nawłocz, but not after. Communism is not a logical conclusion here, it is an impulsive choice. Now, while I wanted to prove my past self wrong, thinking about it some more, I am still of the same mind when it comes to the book's themes. All the three mentioned motives: the disillusionment caused by the reality not being ideal, the opportunistic populism, the pursuance of chaos, all is evident. Cezary Baryka is most certainly a tragic hero. In theory, he had many chances to change his doomed trajectory. Practically, though, he had no possibility to adjust it, with the events pushing him towards the decisions he made. So, that's that. Am I weird if I say that after our reread, I still liked the book? That the author had to face allegations, a love that is barely reciprocated. A love that is barely reciprocated. People driving through in their automobiles. He says the patriots lack a concrete. So, hello again. I'm wearing a different t-shirt, and I guess I put those hidey things. I cannot into English. I guess I put. Yeah, that would need a lot of editing. What did I want to say? So, hello again. I'm wearing a different t-shirt.